Once upon a time, stories from Leicester Libraries Neighbourhood Services. I'm Matt, and the story I'm going to tell you today is called SAS Man. A man walked into an army recruiting office. The recruiting sergeant sat behind a polished wooden desk with a pile of papers neatly to one side, and he motioned the man to take a seat. The man sat down and he declared, "I want to join the SAS." SAS is it? Says the recruiting sergeant. Well, I'm afraid I've got bad news for you, sunshine. You don't just walk in off the street and join the Special Air Service. Those soldiers, they're selected from the very best we have. They're the toughest, they're the bravest, they're the deadliest, they're the most resourceful soldiers in the British Army. They've been famous all over the world since World War II. You don't just walk in here and say, "I want to join the SAS." "I know, I understand that," says the man, "but if you just give me a minute, I think I can convince you I'm just that kind of man." It started in the Amazon rainforest. Well, it started on an ordinary passenger flight over the Amazon rainforest. I was just a young lad at the time, and I was off for a month of backpacking all around South America. And the flight hit a spot of bad weather. Oh, there was lightning crackling and thunder clapping and rain. Oh, and the plane was shaking and the plane was wobbling. And some of the passengers, well, they started to panic a bit. So I jumped up into the aisle and I led them all in a song, to keep up morale. A song. So you're a singer. But that's hardly the skill set we need in the SAS now, is it? I know, but that's just the beginning. So we carried on, and after a short while there was a scream, and one of the cabin crew, she was screaming and she was pointing to the cockpit, and a flash of lightning had struck that cockpit and killed the pilot and the co-pilot instantly. Nobody knew what to do. The cabin crew was screaming. I grabbed those controls, and I fought those controls like a demon. Now, I'm not going to tell you it was the smoothest landing. We came down through that canopy like a cannonball, but I managed to bring that plane to the ground without any further casualties. Well, I'd have to say luck was on your side, says the recruiting sergeant. I know, maybe it was luck, but just let me carry on. So there we were, 150 people stranded in the hugest forest on earth. Nobody knew what to do. Some people were screaming, some people were crying, others just sat in shocked silence. I took control. I organised teams, one to make fire, one to build shelters and another to forage for food, and I got us through that first night. I have to admit, that is resourceful, says the recruiting sergeant. So, during the night I studied the maps and charts, and it became apparent that we were miles from anywhere, miles and miles, and somebody was going to have to go for help. So the next morning I packed a pack with all the essentials. Well, who else did you think was going to go? Yeah, and I headed off alone into the forest. After a day and a half, 2 days, I reached the great river itself. Have you ever seen it? It's a big river. Swimming wasn't an option, even if I could make the distance, which to be honest I think I could. The water was teeming with deadly piranha fish. I'd have been stripped to the bone in seconds. So I looked around, managed to gather some branches and some vines, and I quickly lashed together a raft and I crossed that river. Wow, that is daring, says the recruiting sergeant. I got to the far bank and I collapsed on the ground to catch my breath, and I thought I was safe. And out of the shallows came a black caiman. Well, you probably think those Amazonian alligators, you probably think they can't move very fast on those stumpy little legs, but let me tell you, they're a lot faster than a man on those muddy riverbanks. It was on me in seconds, and it just ripped my arm straight off in a single bite. I gritted my teeth to hold back a scream, and we started to fight. I was fighting for my life, and we wrestled and we rolled and we rolled and we wrestled until the great beast lay dead on the bank beside me. Well, I knew I'd not got long. I was losing a lot of blood. So I quickly grabbed a spare guitar string I had in my pack, and I fashioned a needle from one of those deadly sharp teeth, and I stitched that arm back on. Blimey, that is tough, said the recruiting sergeant. Yeah, well, I lay in a fevered sleep for 2, 3 days, who knows, till I eventually came round and I managed to crawl out of the jungle back to civilization. They sent a rescue mission to recover the other passengers, and I was rushed straight to hospital. The doctors, they were amazed I'd survived at all, and they couldn't believe that I'd managed to sew my arm back on. I mean, they reckoned they could have done a neater job, but they thought I'd done pretty well. I can't believe it, says the recruiting sergeant. I've got to admit, this is unusual, but you are just the kind of man we need in the SAS. And the man says, well, that's just great. And that is the story of the SAS Man. Thank you very much. Oh, I've not said the bit about sharing.